we made some calls on, what's the peak price? What's the highest price Bitcoin hits? So this is, I think, the live. We were big buyers 2 weeks ago on the show of the 200, which was at 24%, especially the 140. The 150 was at 44%. So in 2 weeks, when we were looking at this, the 150K, it was 44% 2 weeks ago when we said we'd buy it. It's now 56%. So that's up 12%. And as well, you had increases across the board on the other numbers.
Really big, the most movement on 150. That
Yeah.
was where the most action was. And this is by the end of the year, 150K by the end of the year, which a lot of us, a lot of you watching and us here think is bearish. Yeah, I'm a buyer of all of these. The $1 million at 5%,
I think that's fine.
I'm buying that.
No.
I think there's a 5% chance. Obviously, I'm just going to buy the Bitcoin, but I think there's probably about a 5% chance that it could hit $1 million if this suddenly hits. If there's an SBR, if the United States starts buying Bitcoin, that could set it off.
I think the 1 million's fairly priced, and even with the recent run up here, I'd still be a buyer of that 250 down to 150 range. I think those are still underpriced. I think you're kind of 150 high water mark is basically, unless something goes massively wrong, you absolutely will see that.
200K at 28% seems pretty low to me.
I'd
say that's like at least 50.
Yeah, I think it's low. I think you have a much higher chance of that.
What do you think, John? 200K by the end of the year. What are your odds? Polymarket has it at 28%.
I would buy that for sure. I think remind me, it just has to cross 200K at some point. It doesn't have to end the year at 200K, right?
If any Binance 1 minute candle, so just a tiny little
anytime
1 minute candle goes over it.
Yeah, man, I think that should be way higher than 28%, just because we're talking about like what kind of pullback we see in the price.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, I do think we're going to see significant pullbacks on a percentage basis, significant defined as like somewhere between 40 to 60%. But the main reason I feel that way is because I think the euphoria is going to kick in. I think you're going to be having publicly traded companies trying to pull off the MicroStrategy LBE leveraged Bitcoin equity playbook. I think you'll get some announcement like we talked about at the beginning of the show from the US. I think you get other nation states. I'm not talking, 100 nation states. I'm not talking 100 publicly traded companies, but publicly traded companies, probably like a dozen or more, I think in 2025 are going to try to copy that LBE playbook. I think we get a handful of nation states that once they see the US is serious about at least holding Bitcoin, they're going to try to do something. And there's going to be a period in time where it's just going to seem like everything's happening at once. Oh my gosh, they announced. Maybe Zuckerberg does, right? Like that's another potential shoe to drop. And if enough of those things happen in a 1 to 2 week time period, the euphoria kicks in. You have to remember, these are markets that humans are driving. And I think we just definitely go above 200K. I think there could be a pullback of potentially 50% if you get a series of negative headlines. But man, 200K just seems like it would be too orderly to think that we just kind of go up gradually to 150, 170K and don't go higher than that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's probably the floor is like 30%, which is what we've seen in the past in bull market drawdowns. Unless we get like even more euphoria, right? But everything, I just feel like it's going to be the same thing playing out with different players in terms of the levels of euphoria that are going to be happening and percentage terms of the total network value, right? It'll be bigger whole numbers, but we've got 70 companies holding Bitcoin right now, public companies. Almost all of them are quite small holdings, but that is growing with, like we were talking about, SAB 121 going away. That's just, I could see most corporations, starting to, think seriously about buying some Bitcoin, and a lot of them actually doing it in 2025. And all of this stuff initiates, like, people are understanding Bitcoin as an asset that you hold on to. This is a reserve asset for your corporate treasury, for your own personal treasury, for a nation state treasury. This is now the understanding of Bitcoin. It's not something to gamble on. It's not just some magic internet money that these dorks play with. It's not gambling. It's an actual asset that's here to stay, that's been legitimized and integrating very quickly into our legacy financial system. that understanding is very different from 2017 or 2021. That's out there now, right? That idea that Bitcoin is a legitimate store of value asset that is worthy of being on corporate balance sheets and worthy of being held by nation states has not existed in a bull market yet,
Sure.
right? And with these rules and this administration coming in, this new government coming in, it's just all set up and the fundamentals are there for just what could be absolute fireworks. There will be blow off tops. Something will happen. Something will break. Somebody will get, like you said, John, like way too leveraged and irresponsible. And something will break and it'll be a big headline and people will get scared and there'll be dumps. That's going to happen. But I don't see it going much below 30%, if even that. And then it's going to be right back up because it's, buying opportunity. Where the top is, I don't know. If the US starts buying Bitcoin, a bunch of other nation states start buying Bitcoin, Facebook buys Bitcoin, more of the Mag 7 buy Bitcoin, then it's like, okay, well, the most influential holders of assets in the world,
Yeah.
BlackRock, etc., are holding and facilitating Bitcoin transactions and accumulation. Maybe we have hit the suddenly, and you're on the asymptote of the adoption curve, and there's not these sort of, the initial tail volatility and cycles anymore. It's bigger than that now. That's a possibility.
So I'm a buyer of the idea that like you see a lot of these treasury strategies and you see a lot of these companies that do something. I'm still somewhat skeptical that we see it at these like really high level, like, Mag 7, these larger companies. I don't, because it's not just like the viability of the strategy, but it's also when you're winning and you're winning in a big way, like, do you need it? I don't know. Maybe they will, but there's a way in which they don't need it. But that being said, I don't disagree on the corporate
But
adoption.
their cash is literally burning a hole in their
Yeah,
balance
but do
sheet.
you care? Do you care? I don't know. Care enough to take a big step. Like,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't have a strong opinion on it. But I do think you see a lot. We already have seen a lot of these corporations moving forward with it. And I think you do continue to see that. And I think it is a huge driver. So I definitely don't disagree on the corporate adoption point. I'm also bullish you're going to see quite a bit of that, much more than in the past, this cycle and this year. But I wonder if it really makes it all the way up to the Apples and the Googles and all of that. But either way, like the SAB 121, I mean, it's a big deal for the banks, and the banks getting involved like opens up a new dimension for even what can happen in this industry and what can happen for companies that are going to be looking for custodians. They'll be looking for, so, I mean, the basic premise is all good and all true. Yeah. I mean, I just think the environment we're faced with is one where it's such a swing versus last year. It's such a radically different swing on a regulation front and on the relationship that the industry is having with the power structures, where just the difference between 2025 and 2024, I think, will be stark.
Just to elaborate on Steven's point about when the Mag 7 companies are winning as much as they are, which I totally agree with, just to put some numbers around it, NVIDIA, the last 15 years of total return for their stock on an annualized basis has gone up about 45%. Amazon is kind of the next one here, 27%. Apple's 26%. Microsoft is 20%. I mean, that is winning from such a huge perspective. These shareholders that have big positions in these companies to be up 20 to 40+% per year for 15 years in a row, you have delivered such incredible success for your shareholders that like there's just not a huge incentive for them to say, let's do this new thing that we don't really have a core competency in. I think there's a 0% chance that they try to pull it off as big as MicroStrategy because that takes like all of your focus.
Yeah.
So I think the question is like, do they say, hey, we have a lot of cash, let's put 1% of it into Bitcoin?
That's more along the lines of what I'm thinking for sure.
That could happen, but I think even then it's hard to like get the focus from shareholders and to get them to care about it. I think it takes a company like Tesla with a unique founder. Meta, I think probably
Meta
has
could do it.
Meta
could do it. I mean, Zuckerberg's got just like Saylor, Zuckerberg's got control.
Zuckerberg could do it. I think the rest of them, you have limited shot, but I think there's a decent chance maybe you see Zuckerberg do
The
it.
guy has a goat named Bitcoin
Yeah,
and
exactly.
another goat named Max.
Yeah, he likes it. You can tell he likes it. He's obviously going through a bit of a vibe shift, of an image rehabilitation lately. So you could see, especially, so here's the thing. If the administration does the strategic reserve, I think your probabilities of all these things go up, because you're seeing all these big tech companies trying to make nice, and kind of, they're making donations, they're coming to the inauguration, they're doing these things. And so if Bitcoin becomes seen as a Trump thing, I think your meta probabilities go way up. There's a way that it's kind of just seen as like, well, companies are doing good doing this, MicroStrategy's up a lot, Trump's into it, why shouldn't we do it? It'll be seen as favorable.